Welcome everybody here. This is Jeremy Bruce of Saga Media. This is our wellness section, and we have a special guest today, Jessica Rosario of Sound Body Initiative, and we're here to talk about sound bowls,
Here to talk about sound healing,
sound
the
healing.
power of sound, vibration.
Yeah, I wanted to do this for our guests out there because I've been into many years of meditation. This is the part that uh, I haven't really studied. We've talked earlier, hang drums, things of that, tones, but I wanted to just kind of first dive into how you started this. What did you do previously? Where did the journey begin? And kind of dive into the healing aspects of it in many different forms because I have a ton of questions in regards
Awesome.
to like just body, mind, ailments, and everything in
Awesome.
between.
Very cool.
So where did this begin, and why this
So,
particular?
well, my journey through music began when I was just a wee little girl. I've always been a singer, and I've always felt extremely drawn to music. It's always been a part of my being. And so, growing up and going into my adult life, I started writing music and playing in different groups, yada yada. And so I guess for me, music was always like my channel. That was always my connection with source. And the deeper I got into music and the closer I got with my music, the closer I became to God, essentially, closer I became to divine source. And so for me, music was always my way to try and not only heal myself, but help to heal others. So sound healing is something that I've been doing intuitively for a really long time with my music. And then just after 2000 is when I sort of decided to put this into a more intentful practice and kind of change the setting a little bit and yeah, and kind of really connect the why and the what and the how with people to actually use it on an intentional level.
So you said sound. You said source. That
Mhm.
that strikes a chord with me.
Mhm.
God, divine source.
Mhm.
Um, where did you learn about? Like, what started you on source? Because for me, when I was, going through life and through this journey, you try to find God. You try to find what your purpose is, what your passion is, what your life purpose is, if they want to say that. But source is. Are you familiar with Esther Hicks at all?
Abraham.
Abraham,
Yeah,
Esther and
Abraham.
Abraham.
Everson
Okay.
Abraham.
So
Yeah,
Source,
yeah.
that's where I started learning
Sure.
about, I've started following her, and that got me to what is Source? Like, what is my vortex? What is,
Mhm.
um, where did, so did it just come from music? Was it something else that might have happened that, like, in life, or was there like a moment that got you to say, okay, I need to continue this journey, and this
Mhm.
is the path?
I think my spiritual path began when I was in high school sometime. I just remember like a history book and for whatever the topic was, it was kind of touching on like cultures around the world and Buddhism was something that struck a chord with me. And so that's when I started um, my research or deep dive into spirituality and going down the path to enlightenment, so to speak. And so I graduated high school in 2004. So that was ever since I've been on that journey and just closer and closer. And I don't know, just always fascinated with it, fascinated with the fact that so many cultures around the world can be delivering the same message. And I really always felt that connection my entire life. Even when I was little, I was fascinated with like death and the afterlife
Yeah.
and things like that. So, but music taught me to be in tune, and so just learning to use my body as an instrument and just realizing like if you start to watch the patterns and you start to watch things unfold in your life, you'll notice how um, the synchronicities, like one thing can speak to something else. Like for instance, my instrument. So my instrument was not just like musically, but it was also consciously. So as a writer, being able to sit and sort of tune in to messages, not necessarily that are of myself. It's like kind of like, what does the world need to hear?
So you brought up like being conscious and the subconscious. Do you feel that um, certain aspects of this can help with? Okay, so for example, like the subconscious. Um, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about rewiring yourself,
Mm-hmm.
like you're a program
Mm-hmm.
because of what you might have been taught as a child, certain circumstances. So then that vibration and what's wired within you.
For sure.
Do you feel that this can bring to like different types of vibrations throughout? Because I know for me, this
Yeah.
this journey on in finding different ways, and I like to experiment with different types of meditation, tones, sounds, things of that nature, breathing techniques.
Mm-hmm.
It brought me through quite a few different, I would say, stressful times of my life,
Mm-hmm.
and so and I don't know if I would have gotten to where I am today
For
without
sure.
it. And I don't know, like,
Yeah, I think a lot of people can say that. That's really exciting to me. So part of so Sound Body's motto, so to speak, is connecting consciousness through sound. And so essentially, on a fundamental level, what sound is doing is it's penetrating through matter. So vibrations penetrate dense matter, and that goes for the human body as well. So on a very basic level, what it's doing is it's clearing and opening up passageways between the cells for optimal communication. So that can be on a neurological level to a very physical level, from organ tissue to tissue, as well as patterns of the brain, patterns of the neurology. But then going into that even deeper, our neurology is more than just like what's in our brain. We have like mirror neurons that sense the world around us, that are constantly picking up vibrations and transmitting messages to and from us. So when we use sound, not only are we just like naturally opening up passageways between the bodies, but then we're adding intention on top of it. So it's super applicable for retraining the nervous system and reprogramming the subconscious. And that's kind of like a really fascinating aspect of it to me, which is, gosh, I want to tell, my mind wants to talk about, it wants to get from point A to point C so fast.
no, we got a lot
But
here because there's
yeah,
so many
it,
questions I have for this.
um, go ahead, keep asking me your
No, so
questions.
so
Bring me
you,
back.
you brought up no, but you brought up passageways and opening,
Mm,
and I've been able to experience feeling that openness because I know when like your vortex, your passageway gets blocked, certain aspects of your environment around you are even not responding to certain situations, but
mm-hmm,
you started going into like touching on communicating. Do you feel
mm,
that other humans, like say you have a loved one that you just might not be able to communicate from all the technology that we have, but you want to
mm-hmm,
send a message?
mm-hmm.
Do you feel like almost they say telepathically? Do you feel through this you could kind of talk? Because there is human beings that claim that they've been able to hear
Sure.
each other speak without speaking to each other, and
For
they could be
sure.
2,000 miles away.
I don't think it's the sound that causes that to happen, but theoretically, yes, it can happen, and it does happen. So, going back to like neurology and like the brain, so sound and music is so incredibly expansive and beneficial to the mind body connection because it's activating almost every center of the brain. So, it's activating your memory, it's activating your auditory, your visual cortex, even your balance and your motion. So, um, in addition to sort of, is that it's like activating all these pleasure sensors.
Yeah.
So the body and the mind is able to learn a little quicker, but in addition, it's slowing down your brain waves. So you're going into a relaxed state. So are you familiar with the different brain wave states of the mind?
I am, but
So there's like, so there's beta, alpha,
yep.
theta, gamma,
And that goes with
delta.
like beta tones. I've kind
Sure,
of like
sure. So the theory is that you can activate certain wavelengths, and you can with different tones and different pulses. But the same thing is also happening like when you go out into nature and you're listening to crickets and you're listening to water. So what's happening is called brainwave entrainment.
hmm
And so entrainment is just a process that happens It's a process of physics that happens where two different patterns will synchronize to become more harmonious. And so that's happening to your brain. And so if you think about it on on a compounding level, you are being distracted by cameras.
No, well, so here's a good, because this just for
So essentially, for the messages, so essentially what you're doing is you're slowing down the brain waves, and
Yep.
so when the wavelengths become longer, they're able to travel greater distances. So the principle of using like telepathy would correlate to your gamma brave waves, and so those happen like way deep into the subconscious. And so when we're using sound, we're kind of tapping into those natural responses of
Yes.
the brain patterns,
It-
because your brain and your heart are giving out electrical impulses. You're constantly creating vibrations and messages all the time.
and do you feel, because obviously because of technology today and being around large cities, where our brainwaves are being completely distracted is probably the best way to do it through, there's so much in the air and whatnot because of like cell towers and whatnot. I don't know if that's proven or unproven. I'm not gonna, that's for another discussion, but many will say that disrupts brain waves. Is this a way to kind of do you feel for yourself, and this isn't any kind of medical advice or anything out there to the world, but this is a personal opinion, do you feel going through sessions like this and utilizing this type of sound kind of can clear that back? Because I know for me, when I'm in a big city or a very busy city and then I'm out in nature, I mean, I could just tell I'm clear.
Yeah,
It
100%.
really does. And that's just from being away from the noise.
100%. Yeah, I mean, that's easy to do. One thing I've been doing in my practice is taking the bowls to meditate at different places in the city. So, we can all meditate when it's like peaceful and quiet and there's rainbows, but a lot of times we have a hard time tuning into that state of being when there's all this other noise around us. So as far as like, yeah, sure, it's easier to meditate when it's quiet and there are no distractions, but here we are in this time in space where there are a lot of distractions, and I think, finding ways to meditate and finding whatever tools that you can use essentially as an anchor into that state that you can attune yourself into to whenever, I mean, preferably the goal is all the time, but
Yeah.
we can't be there all the time, but
Yeah, it's
but the brain's constantly putting out all of those wave patterns at once. It's never just in one state. It's never so essentially it's what your brain is tuning into. What patterns and what repetitions are you tuning into so that your organism can function at a more harmonious and efficient rate.
so, and that kind of goes back to, so cells, you had mentioned certain sound waves can get into your cells. I mentioned Dr. Joe Dispenza, where they claim that they've been able through their types of tones and meditations, breathing techniques. I mean, cells healing the body as well. So obviously, it's in the name of your company, but healing in ailments. In your personal opinion, do you feel that this is something that can heal or assist with ailments such as, I mean, the brain, focus, ADHD, things like that?
For sure.
Some try to get out, they don't want to be on medication. They're looking for other avenues. That's why you're starting to see with like the CBD and medical marijuana and things like that, helping others who don't want to be on antidepressants, things like that. ADHD is obviously a major issue in today's world with focus. Does this kind of get the mind to start to, you're talking about flowing, especially for people who they do live a busy life and sometimes hectic, and they want to get that, like, it's hard to stay on point.
So you got a couple questions in there, I think.
Yeah, I did. I'm throwing all kind of things. I'm moving that. I need some sound.
Can I get a pen and paper?
So we'll
too?
start with just like ADHD is a good one.
So ADHD focus, basically pattern recognition, brain stimulation. So sound, uh, personally, I feel that sound is our most primal sense. It's the first sense that comes to us in utero. It's the first thing we hear is our mother's heartbeat. When we come out, the first thing we do is cry. So we're sonic beings. So I don't think sound is the end all be all for healing, because like you mentioned, other practices that are simply using thought, but essentially what it is vibration, and again pattern recognition. So a couple reasons it's helpful to the stressed or uh, anxiety, depression, ADHD is because going back to the way it stimulates the brain. So you're stimulating both sides of the brain. So you're both stimulating both hemispheres. You're also giving yourself a boost of dopamine. You're releasing all these like wonderful pleasure hormones, and at the same time, you're just training yourself to repeat the pattern of which you want to essentially behave. And of course, a lot of that comes with doing the emotional work as well, because it's not like, oh, you're just gonna of course we've all been in the place you put on some music and like, yeah, absolutely, it almost like it saves your soul,
It does.
but eventually the music stops and you
Hmm.
have to like figure out how to resonate in that place without
Sure.
it. So, and being sonic beings, being that sound goes in, carries vibrations through us. So going into the healing aspect, so I have definitely seen this work firsthand. Again, I'm not a doctor. This is just my
Yep.
personal observation and opinion. So I've seen it work on not just to a relaxation state, but also bringing relief to physical pain. So I myself have a history of some like back trauma, vertebrae trauma, things like that, and um, there have been times where I've been in so much pain and I sat down with the bowls or sit down with music, and that was kind of what started connecting the dots for me with music and the subconscious and the body, was that I would be in states of pain, but for some reason when I was playing music or when I was singing or dancing, that pain would not be there.
Yeah.
So once I started realizing what was going on a vibrational level, it really all just kind of clicked together. So I just learned of this really wonderful story. Took place in the early 1920s. George Lakhovsky, have you ever heard of this guy?
A little bit.
So George Lakhovsky was a Russian scientist, and he invented this thing called an oscillating wave generator. And his theory was, well, I don't even want to call it a theory, but because he has data and experiments, and so but what I heard about him, what turned me on to finding out about his research, was the fact that he took this sound wave generator and used it on a quadriplegic, and that quadriplegic walked out of the hospital on
Oh.
crutches using sound every single day on the body. And so the principles behind this treatment is that the cells, a damaged cell, which is no longer oscillating at its normal rate, which is no longer connecting at its normal rate, when you apply all these different waves on all these different wavelengths and different patterns going on, the cell will naturally attune itself to its own or to its own harmonious state, due to the resonances within the body.
Oh.
So, that's just like really exciting and fascinating to me.
So, and I'm a little bit familiar with the story,
Mm-hmm.
and a couple others that they've been able to heal, and
Mm-hmm.
there's these stories, but you wonder why like it's not being used more than, you know. I think it's starting to come out more. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
really is. I think
Yeah,
we're
it's a lost art, I would
yeah,
say. It's a lost art.
it's on its way back.
Yeah, I mean, it's been used since ancient times. There are folks who say the bowls are have such a profound effect on people because they've been used for so many millennia, that genetically our DNA recognizes the sound of them. So when people hear them, that's why they kind of tend to go into this like epic state, and they
Absolutely.
just feel so epic because
So
yeah, intuitively we're responding to a memory.
there's a place called Trax Farms, if you're familiar. It's out in
Mm-hmm.
Finleyville, and they have one section that has big, medium, and small wind chimes.
Oh,
And
lovely.
my daughter and I will run and we'll
Yeah.
make sure we have to hit all of
Yeah.
them. And when those go off, you can just look around the room and see everybody's like, "Oh, what are those
Yeah.
wind
Yeah.
chimes?" And they are. It's such a soothing sound, and so it's something that I feel it should be practiced more. So in that sense, who who comes and asks to, other than events and whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
do you get requests based off of anybody yet that is ailments or needs
Most
more soothingness in their
sure.
life or relaxation or is trying to get to that state?
Sure. Yeah. A lot of relaxation. A lot of emotional well-being. General mind-body connection things. It's interesting. So like I've we'll do these one-on-one sessions, which are really powerful and intimate experiences. But so oftentimes, essentially, the way I like to practice it is you're allowing. So you're allowing the vibrations in, and you're also allowing the messages that need to come to you. So perhaps starting with, before you go into it, what is it that is most active within you? What is it that's or either irking you or that
Hmm.
is just really alive in you? And so setting that aside, calming the nervous system, and allowing the body to bring you the messages that you need to hear, because the body knows what it needs more quickly and more adeptly than your mind does. So oftentimes, like, people will sort of have revelations, or uh, thoughts or experiences will come to them, and they're like, oh, shoot, that's what I was. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, without necessarily fishing for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Without necessarily probing for the answers tend to naturally come. So, yeah, so
What
it's
about
really
like
neat.
PSTD? Do you think that would, because especially with like veterans or soldiers
Mm-hmm.
mainly, they look to a lot. Some I've heard where like certain medicinal mushrooms help out,
Mm-hmm.
like the breathing techniques of somebody like Wim Hof.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it's like on a per case, basis. But
Mm-hmm.
um,
PTSD is really challenging because, so essentially, when the nervous system goes through a state of trauma, it's like it shuts off, like just ever so quickly. And so it's once that nervous system goes through that traumatic experience and it kind of shuts off, but then you kind of wake up. So it's almost like what's happening is you think you're going to die. Like your nervous system thinks you reached a point of
it's like a
death.
fight or flight type.
Right. It's like a fight or flight thing.
Okay.
And so essentially what's happening is like the PTSD, that's a loop that's happening within the nervous system. So I think there's a lot of understanding that has to go into um, processing not just the trauma but also understanding the reactivity of the nervous system. So you're just in a survival mode. Your neurology is programmed to protect you from that ever happening again, and it thinks that you died, but you didn't. So you have to really reprogram the subconscious. I think the best way. I mean, I don't work with a lot of PTSD. Obviously, I don't have a degree in treating
Sure.
psychological ailments. I think that a lot has, but I do know from sort of processing my own traumas and my own grief, meeting it with a state of curiosity
Yeah.
rather than a state of like, I'm broken and I need to be
Yeah. Fixed.
fixed. Mm-hmm.
What
Sort
about
of
like
saying like, what, you know.
so subconscious? There's a lot of gurus out there and people who say, and some I do believe in, and some I think are complete BS. But if you were taught to be poor your whole life, you can change that subconscious thinking, or successful, or fear, or others would call it the third eye awakening.
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
pineal gland, right? Is this
Mm-hmm.
all kind of start to flow with that, or is this more of just getting into the cells of the, the body itself, like down here?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's all intertwined because the body creates resonances. So, you know, sound is the tool, sound is the anchor, sound kind of gets things moving, but really when it comes down to it, it's your job to consciously connect with it and consciously put in your own intention, your own vibration. So that's why you can do these things without sound. That's why you can do these things simply with your breath or simply by moving the body, um, because your heart and your brain are putting out vibrations, are putting out impulses. So that's why when we slow down the nervous system, we start going into those deeper brainwave states, the mind and the heart start to become in sync. And when those start to become in sync, you're putting out um, harmonious vibrations through the body. And that's why it's essentially able to travel. You're able to project these things.
Do
So
you,
if you just think of us all as little cells, like in the world and in the universe, we're just little cells conducting messages between each other. So wouldn't it make sense then if we have a nervous system that's able to collect and collect and give off information that's not even connected to us? It's like our proprioceptive nervous system we're talking about here. So we wouldn't need words to communicate. We can simply communicate through vibrations.
and that gets you. You mentioned that was my next question: is universe.
Mm-hmm.
I know I believe because I've manifested things that others think that are impossible. Okay, and but there's a lot of practice that goes into it, and you gotta come from that place. Those types of vibrations, though, going out to the universe, not even just communicating with other human beings or
Mm-hmm.
creatures, but the universe itself, because a lot that I've practiced is you can't really hope for it, but you got to speak from it. You have to
Mm-hmm.
become that.
Sure.
Does this
Sure.
kind of get you on that path a little faster, because there is a lot of resistance in the universe and
Yeah.
in the, do you want to call it the quantum field, or
Mm-hmm.
the, where, because I know what it feels like with
Mm-hmm.
the resistance. A lot of it's
Mm-hmm.
my undoing.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's why I've turned to practices like this, because I believe it can change my state almost immediately,
Sure.
where others who don't,
Yes.
like, and they still try to talk to God, the universe, but it seems as though without and I don't want to use this as a crutch or anything. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just, it really does for me. It has opened the path, but the universe can kind of flow right back
Mm-hmm.
to it
Yeah, I
by
mean,
utilizing this.
for sure, it's an incredible tool. And going back to just the way that sound and music stimulates the brain, it's like there's nothing that's going to stimulate your brain in the same way as sound and music does. So, of course, it's going to put you in a relaxed state. So, it is a powerful tool, especially for anyone who does have a lot of mental chatter, who doesn't necessarily believe that there are states of bliss within their own form, because it is so tangible. Like, it's funny to kind of think of sound as tangible, but when it really breaks down, I mean, that's physical forces that are happening. So, um, so yeah, I think it's really wonderful, and having that immediate cause and effect that you get from meditation, and certainly that's what's allowed me to become a deeper meditator, and more of a proficient channel, so to speak.
And when, and
But
when,
again, all it is pattern recognition.
and
So that's why just
wh- once we're aligned too,
mhm,
back to like the universe and your
mhm,
personal thoughts, does the universe bring you, and I don't want to say give you what you want, but put you in the state, or the, like, I like to use it like Michael Beckwith is one who always talked about we're always on a journey of unfolding. It's kind
mhm.
of where I got that from, and I've incorporated it in my life. Does the universe throw back to you, like, that cycle of the vortex, as they say? Because some people will think
So
we're completely nuts and
yeah,
crazy, and that's not true, and
well, no,
things are just they just happen to
it's very
happen.
basic physics. It's very simple pattern recognition and entrainment. So, going back to what you project, what you want to manifest. So, you're not going to find a match to your resonance if you're not actually that resonance. Like you can't harmonize, your B note will not harmonize with a D note if you're playing, if you want to play a B but you're actually playing a C.
Sure.
You've that Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So like you have to actually like, you just really have to, it's imagination, I
Yeah, it
guess.
is. It
Yeah,
really
like
is.
fake it till you make it kind of
Yeah,
situation.
but but you feel it as well. I believe you do have to come from that place, and I think for me, and I think for others, because I have these conversations pretty frequently, when they're just like, well, why isn't the money in the come out of the vortex and into the
Mhm.
bank account,
Mhm.
and when they're struggling financially or whatever,
Mhm.
and it's like, well, if you're constantly at a state of lack,
Mhm.
then you're going to get more lack.
Yeah,
Where
100%, because that's what you're looking so for. So like human beings are programmed to recognize patterns. That's how we survive. So not only do our cells replicate on a mathematical pattern, but like our thoughts and our emotions are attracted to things that we recognize. So you could come into this world recognizing all love and light, and are born with these incredible capabilities, but if by repetition it's trained into you to only see or recognize a particular pattern such as abuse or neglect, you're not, because you want to, but because your neurology is in control. Your subconscious is in control. Like we think we're in control, but we're not.
yeah,
So
it's
your subconscious will constantly seek out those patterns of abuse and those patterns of neglect and those patterns of lack if you have not taken the time to break down what's really going on.
yeah.
Mhm.
Now with other types of music, because you're multifaceted, I've followed you and whatnot. Is one different from the other towards it, or like, so for example, for me, like I grew up with a family around like rock and roll and loud
Mhm.
music, and don't get me wrong, that vibrates to you and gets you moving and puts
Mhm.
you in certain moves and whatnot. But as we grow older, the music gets loud to our ears and starts to hurt her. I know I'm sounding old now.
Mhm.
Where I've more gravitated towards, like I would choose this type of stuff or
Mhm.
it's just where I'm at in my
Mhm.
my journey right now.
Mhm.
Not that I wouldn't ever go see it, but is there a particular other instrument outside of this or other type of music, or do they kind of for you all flow to the vibration for your own body, or is there one in particular, like today you would say that sound coming from that instrument, if you want to call it
Mhm.
that,
Mhm.
right now is what kind of
Mhm.
gives me that feeling that I need or I
Yeah.
want
Sure.
or one of fulfillment?
I think the instruments that resonate most with me, especially on a regular basis, would be um, like acoustic guitar, classical guitar, um, and the handpan resonates a lot,
Yes.
and voice always. Voice is like, if there's a voice in a song, that's immediately, and I think that's natural too.
Yeah.
The human brain is just to um, pinpoint that, but
There's
I
voices
don't
that can
know. I
also
just
be
love,
completely opposite if you go to
right. Yeah,
karaoke
for
enough.
sure. For sure. I love music, and it really just all
Yeah,
depends
me too.
on my state of being. I love
Yeah.
piano. Piano is like stringed instruments, really. Instruments are
We spoke
yeah,
about
really
piano
give it
earlier
to me.
in another session, and
Right
it
on.
really is the way it can flow.
Mhm.
It's definitely, it kind of
Mhm.
reminds you of the waves in the
Mhm.
ocean, if done
Mhm.
right,
Mhm. Yeah.
So, all right, I'm ready to hear some sound
Oh my
waves. Am
gosh.
right? Is that right? Right? Can we?
Yeah, you're ready to
I
experience some
think
sound
so.
waves.
Yeah. Mike's move over, correct?
Okay, we're gonna move our mics a
Yep.
little bit.
All right. So if I was, is there? Getting into a session, do you just start like
So,
how
so
do you
we're just gonna
approach
do a
this?
little. We'll just do a little session, and really, it's just all about relaxation and attunement. So you can just relax back into your seat,
Okay.
um, and as folks are listening, just find a place to be comfortable. If you want to put in a little bit of earbuds, you can. And when you're ready, you can close your eyes, and we'll just start to slow down the breath. Slowing down the breath, you want to breathe nice and deep into your belly. Taking nice long inhales all the way down into the belly. And letting out nice slow exhales. Perhaps even letting out a sigh, letting out a yawn. As the nervous system naturally begins to slow down. Feeling that relaxation start to wash over you. Begin noticing the sounds of the bowls. Noticing where the vibrations hit different parts of your mind, different parts of the body. All the while keeping the breath slow and deep. giving yourself love for the opportunity of allowing your cells to work and your body to do exactly what it needs to do. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes.
That's amazing.
Wow. Do you feel relaxed in that very short session?
Yes, that was awesome. Thank you. No, that was amazing. That is what I can't tell you. Certain tones, you really feel it inside. It's
yeah. So typically we do like 1 to 2 hour sessions, with the bowls, and then sometimes with other instruments and things involved. So. It really, kind of takes you on a journey.
Oh, it really does. I mean, it's hard to even put into words, but boy, you can feel it inside. That's amazing. So, business wise now, like where the business, like how does one, who is a good candidate for like hire, like where's, when you're going to go outward to grow your company, who do you want to outreach to, and how do they get a hold of you?
Sure. So my work is really applicable to nonprofits, such as wellness events or corporate initiatives who really want to give back to their employees, but it's also really great for bringing to the public as well. So wonderful opportunities for nonprofit initiatives. These are also really wonderful for ceremonies, for weddings, showers, basically any environment where you want to connect with your group in an intentional setting, because not only is it going to bring you into a relaxed state, but you're also going to create like this wonderful bonding experience with everyone involved. So,
like team building, retreat. No,
absolutely. So what took me into wanting to do this in a official like kind of business setting was really wanting to submerge people into sound, not just through relaxation, but sound, and so applicable to using it for the entire body. So we're talking about movement, we're talking about dance, and just seeing where that journey and that transformation happens through the process. So
is there
really
a
powerful
movement, you said dance in part, like is there another type of session where they kind of move and like there's movement towards it? I can definitely put that aspect.
So you can feel that. So
yes.
So I'm in my own practice. So and with groups as well. So there are some different movements that I incorporate. There's not just movement like Tai Chi. Essentially, it's like it is sort of like Tai Chi, because when you move, you're starting to engage other parts of your neurology. You're starting to create a stronger connection between the left and right hemispheres of the brain. So that's why movement is so important for me to incorporate into my practice. And then going even further in that, there's dance. So once you start getting into intuitive movement, sometimes the body wants to dance. And when you get into different types of movement therapies, you'll find that there are certain rhythms that not only happen within the body, but also within the psyche and within nature. So just like any resonance and any vibration, the body wants to express that as well. So oftentimes, when treating issues with the subconscious, if you start to move those vibrations out of the body, a really, really quick transformation will start to happen. So energy will become trapped inside of your cells, between your cells, and that's when disease starts to happen. And so making sense. If your cells aren't communicating correctly, how are they going to heal themselves, or how are they going to put themselves in a position to be healed? So once you you get into sound, you relax the nervous system, you come into a state of cohesion, and as you get it more into your meditation and start incorporating movement, the movement and the dance starts to become like a trance as well. And so
No, that
Yeah,
sounds
so
amazing.
it's
Yeah,
really cool.
no,
Yeah.
exactly. That's why I brought it up because I could feel the flow as it
Yeah.
like I said, certain when you were hitting some of them, like I could feel it inside, and
There's a little bit
it's
of what you
amazing.
want to move. I usually like to encourage people, even if it's just in a sound bath setting,
Yeah,
if at any point you feel the need to vocalize, whether that be hum or sigh, or like for me, even if I'm not meditating with music, I will naturally sort of like sway. And it's almost like it's just that like little anchor, that little
yeah,
like that little pattern that
flows.
like yeah
Yep.
that perpetuates the direction in which you want to head.
Yeah,
So,
that's
yeah.
amazing.
And I think people are doing that constantly on a subconscious level, but when you really attach the intention to it,
Yeah.
you start to see powerful results really quickly. Really
Yeah, I
quickly.
think it could go across the board too in your life, like not just health and ailments, but just if you feel stuck, if you're in your professional standpoint, your
Mhm.
love life,
Mhm.
or just feeling where you're not
Mhm.
knowing where you're at and unfulfilled.
Mhm.
This is definitely this definitely can assist with that. So how does a group get a hold of you? Is there social media,
Oh my
email?
gosh. Yeah.
How
So you can go to sound-body.org, and that's the website, and you can find everything through there. You can also find me on social media, just Sound Body Initiative.
and for all of
Yeah, and you
our
can find my
watchers and listeners, we'll attach all those links to the bottom of the video and whatnot, and then we're going to be open to comments too. So anything we could like throw to you, like
yeah, for
email,
sure. Yeah, I
whatnot.
love answering questions. I know it's like hard to touch on everything in just a short amount of
No,
time because it
absolutely.
really is. It's such an all-encompassing subject.
Yeah, no, we would
Mm-hmm.
love, and also to love to like have you on again. Potentially, we're going to be doing these on, and we might even do like a bigger group setting or whatnot, and
Yeah, that
maybe
would be
we can even
wonderful.
incorporate some of the movement.
I was gonna say maybe we could do like a toning
Yeah,
session
that
where
would
we
be
use
awesome.
movement and the voice
Yes,
to just kind of attune the entire body. And these are wonderful. I like teaching people these because they're amazing practices that are super applicable to anybody's
yeah.
daily routine. Yeah.
No, it's been a pleasure, and I can't to the watchers and listeners. You have to experience this one on one because that sound is just it really reaches the soul, and so I know it's something that I have a great appreciation for just the whole meditation, and I'm always growing. So,
Likewise.
thank you.
Likewise. Thank
All right,
you.
Jessica,
Yeah.
it's been
Thank
a
you for the
pleasure.
opportunity to talk
Absolutely.
about this and
All
bring it
right,
to others.
it's been a
Yeah.
pleasure.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.